Good morning. Welcome back to Astrology from a Libra's perspective. Today is Thursday, May 7th, 2020. And this is the daily horoscope reading for all my Aries out there. Salute to all my Aries. Love you all. Appreciate you all. An analytical friend's advice is still humming in your mind. How can they see things so clearly? To you, life isn't always black and white like that. But while your appreciation of the gray areas of human relationships may add drama and conflict to your life, would you really want it any other way? Do an experiment today to find out. Try to avoid too much deliberation. Consider your options and then decide immediately. Find out if all the time you usually spend debating decisions is worth it. So, for all my Aries out there for today, basically what my advice for you all would be, for me personally, a lot of things are black and white. And I'm a pretty straightforward person, in that aspect. But I do acknowledge the gray area. And while I think more things are black and white than are gray or are shaded in that gray area, I think the things that exist in that gray area, while the minority, I think is where some of the most complex and potentially educational things and potentially enlightening things also lie at the same time. So you can be the minority or have a minority in a situation and have more potential power than what the majority is. A lot of things are straightforward. A lot of things you can't or shouldn't argue. It just is what it is. But I think the things that fall within those parameters are the things that say, okay, but why are these things this way? Or how can such a thing or such things exist in this way? And what are these things here to teach us in the manner in which they exist? And then how do those things relate to us and our existence and how we think and how we feel? So I don't think that the black and white has to necessarily go against the gray areas, but I think the gray areas exist to help us question and help us learn from those questions when it comes to the black and white. Now, what I would say pertaining to this horoscope for all my Aries out there, by doing an experiment to find out, basically what I think this horoscope is saying is that it comes down to this, right? This is the flat line. You can spend hours in a day deliberating about a decision. You can spend hours in a day deliberating about your relationship, deliberating about what someone said to you, what someone's actions are. You can spend hours in a day deliberating about how you feel about a situation. But ultimately, you come to a point of critical mass, and that critical mass is you finally determining to make a decision. Now, here's what the crux of that is. This is what it boils down to. Once you've made that decision, whatever that decision is, whether it's a large decision or a small decision, once you have made that decision, then look back and say, okay, all the time that I spent deliberating on this decision, aside from how much I may think it weighed on that decision, did it really change anything? I kind of have a just do shit or get shit done kind of attitude. And you can deliberate or you can worry about potential regrets after the fact. Because the truth about a lot of things that I've experienced comes down to this. The decisions that we have made in our past, that we make on a daily basis, have less consequences than the way we internalize what led up to those decisions and then what immediately followed those decisions. So basically this is saying, think about what it is you want to do. Think about whatever it is that is running through your mind, that you are processing, that you internalize. Make a decision on it. And try to avoid so much deliberation as you make those decisions. Consider what your options are, decide immediately, and then find out if all the time that you spent deliberating, however much time it was that you spent debating on what you should or shouldn't do, find out if that was worth it. In other words, did you waste that extra time? Could you have made that decision sooner and then moved on to the next option? Or was the time that you actually spent debating contingent on that decision that you arrived at. And I think six to seven out of the 10 times, I think you're going to realize that the same decision would have been made either way. And then two, the longer you deliberate or debate on something, and obviously there's exceptions to this rule, but I think you'll realize 6 to 7 out of 10 times, the longer you debate on something, the longer you deliberate on something before actually putting it into action, the more that situation is going to confuse you, or the more reasons you can find to go against whatever decision. And then you just end up in a back and forth. So for all my Aries today, if you are dealing with a conundrum, you are dealing with a situation that you need to make, you're dealing with something that has to be done, but you're not sure where to go in that fork in the road. Consider what each consequence for each direction you could possibly take, whether it be left, right, or straight ahead. And after you are done considering what the potential consequences of whatever direction you choose could potentially weigh on you, make a decision and stick to it and go with that first decision. There's something to be said about the saying that usually it's your first thought or your first instinct that typically ends up being right. And the longer you take before you actually decide to implement that action or that choice, the longer you spend doing that, the more you can confuse yourself. So I'm not saying jump head first and don't consider. I'm not saying jump in the pool in the deep end without getting your feet wet first. Analyze the situation. See what potential there is, either or, right? Or A, B, C, D, however many choices or options you have. But then as soon as you have considered what the potential upsides and what the potential downsides are, pros versus cons, make that decision immediately after that. And then the experiment part is figure out, when you've done that, what the drastic difference, if any, may have existed from the times where you held off for hours and days and weeks to make a decision. So for all my Aries out there, I wish you all luck in whatever it is you're deliberating against today or debating within yourself. I wish you all love, peace, wealth, and overall health. This is Astrology from a Libra's perspective, brought to you by the Social Forecast, and I will see all my Aries back here tomorrow. Peace and love.